So once you made your basic beat, basic 1 bar long drum beat, you want to make it a bit more interesting. So in this video, I'm going to look at how to make a really solid drum beat, make sure that it's nicely balanced and it sounds good, and then look at how to extend that into more of a drum track so that we can start building up an actual song. And I've got here a couple of examples of students' work that people have shared with me already, some really nice drum beats coming out. So I'm going to use that to show you a few things now. So let's take a look at this first one. Another way to listen to just one at a time is you can use this solo button. So if I don't have it pressed, they all play at the same time. But if I hit solo on that track, we just get one track. So that's a pretty good beat. Okay, let's take a look at it. It's got kick on beat 1 and 3. It's got snare on 2 and 4. It's got a nice rhythmic hi-hat. But if we compare it with the next track down, so I'll solo that one, unsolo the first one. That's a little bit more groovy, isn't it? That works a little bit better as a drum track. And the reason for that is that it's not just the exact same thing twice in a row. Okay, it has its kicks in the right places, it has snare in the right place, and the toms here are a nice addition. So it's almost exactly the same. It's just these mid-toms up here that make the difference, right? If we remove them, it's just exact same thing. It's not so interesting. Add that one little bit in. And the whole thing starts moving a bit more. Okay, so if we wanted to make that first beat just a little bit more groovy, we could do the same kind of thing, right? We just add a little bit of variation. It could be so simple as just adding in a few extra beats at the end. And now suddenly it just grooves a little bit more because it's not exactly the same thing twice in a row. Let's take a look at our third beat. So listening to that, it sounds like they've got a really nice 4 in the floor. But if we take a look here, we see that the kick isn't actually at the beginning of each beat, but it's been put on the end. So the whole thing has been shifted over one direction. And that's fine if it's just the drum beat, but once we start adding other things on, it's going to be really hard to line them up because we want everything to be on the beat. So we've got to move everything over. Okay, we could shift everything over one step to the right and then it'll all be in the right place. Yep, so our kick gets moved over one to the right and this one circles back to the beginning. We're going to move all the snares over. We're going to move these 4 over. All of those get moved. Now let's have a listen. So now it sounds exactly the same, but we have everything on beat 1, so when we add a bass line in, it's going to line up nicely. What we're missing though is the snare on 2 and 4. We have snares here, but none of them are on 2 or 4. Now those snares sound pretty nice, so I don't want to remove them. So maybe we could add a different snare sound. Yep, how about snare 2 on beat 2 and 4. And then it all just sticks together a bit better and we really feel those strong beats. The other thing to watch out for is that there isn't actually a sound for this on this drum kit. If you choose a different drum kit, maybe it'll certainly pop up. And it just happens that on that drum kit, some of them are a bit tuned, we have some pitches, and it actually comes out as a really nice little drum beat, creating a little melody in it. So just play around with things and you might find something that you weren't expecting, which actually works really well. So once we got a nice balanced drum beat like those, we want to extend it into more of a drum track. So if we go back to our first one, if you go to this loop picture here, you can just drag it, and we're going to look at making a 4-bar loop, okay? Make sure you drag your loop section up here as well. So that gives us 4 bars long. That's nice, but it's just the same thing again. So just like before, we want some variation at the end. We want what we call a drum fill. Okay, so we can't edit just the last one because this is a loop. If we double click it and we edit, it's going to edit every single version of that, yeah? I remove that and it removes it here. It removes it all the way down the line. So what we have to do is we put our cursor where we want to slice this. Okay, we right click and we hit split region. So now that last one has been cut off, it's separate. Whoops. Don't want to lose it like that. Make sure I fix that. It's separate and we can alter it on its own. Yep, so we could don't forget your undo buttons if you do something that you don't want to do. So we need to make sure that we're editing the right part. So we can scroll over to that. Right, double click. Find the right part. So these are our last 4 beats. And we should be able to change them without changing anything that came before. So maybe we want to make just a slight change. And you can do lots of sounds by just dragging across. That's a useful shortcut. So let's hear what that sounds like. So you can hear that we have a little variation on the 4th bar, and it just picks it up a little bit, just like when we added something different at the end of our 4th beat, but on a bigger scale. Okay, so here's an example of somebody who actually made a drum fill on a separate track. So we're listening to both of these tracks together. Let's make it a looping 2-bar. And they actually had the tempo slower. So the speed of the beat was slower. So I'm just going to lower that a bit. Try it again. So they had a really nice rock fill in here. Okay, it's using, let's see if we can find it. Here we go. So it's not using any kick or snare or hi-hats. So that's another way to go, is for the fill, you just have completely different. We use different sounds, these tom sounds, and it's even got a crash at the end. Okay, so what they could do is loop this 3 times. Now this is actually 2 bars long because the very first bit starts just before the beat. So if we scroll up and take a look at that, you'll see that the first sound is actually before the beginning of the bar. So let's make sure our loop is 4 beats long now, 4 bars long. And then we've got a nice fill at the end of the 4 bars. And the final thing we're going to look at is this beat here. So it's really common for us to using these drum tracks is you want to fill it up. You want to put as many sounds as possible. And this creates quite a nice one here. Okay, let's just loop one bar again. But it has a lot going on because you can see all these different instruments going on there. So what we can do is if you have something like this, a loop that's really busy, okay, we can do the drag it out so it's 4 long, get our cursor in the right place, split the region so we have our last one separate. Oops, didn't want to lose the end bit there, so undo. Make sure we're looping 4 whole bars. And then what we can do is you can just take your really busy loop, just remove a few things. Okay, this is from the main beat. So what's this sound like now? So that's a bit more plain now, but I haven't removed them from the 4th time around. So what's going to happen is we're going to get those extra sounds coming in just the 4th time as a nice drum fill. So it adds a bit of variety. So that's how you extend your 1 bar drum beat into a 4 bar long drum pattern. And next we'll be looking at how to add some bass onto that and start building up an actual song.